Hey Benjamin, Jane, welcome to Suite 419. Today we're going to talk about a difference in healthcare between Sweden and the United States. Okay, this is my primary question, and I would like as much info as possible. Feel free to include any kind of like personal experience, whether your own or family members, whatever you feel comfortable talking about. When you were in the United States, was there any kind of dealing with healthcare, or how would you compare it in general to Sweden, healthcare in the United States versus Sweden's?
I could probably start by saying that the healthcare system in America is very different from the one that we have in Sweden. In just in the most basic idea that um, since Sweden is a very what we call like a liberal country, uh, where the state does provide each citizen with a number of goods and services. Um, we do have free healthcare. We also have, to a bigger, lesser extent, we have free school for every citizen between the primary up until what you would call high school.
Mhm.
Uh, when I lived in the US, I had not too much of an experience with the healthcare system. However, I did suffer from strep one summer, and I had to go to the doctor. It was actually kind of annoying because I did have my Swedish insurance, and that was actually supposed to cover going to the doctor for anything really.
Mhm.
Um, but I, when I went to the hospital, to the clinic, they did not take my insurance card. They did not recognize the insurance company from back in Sweden. It wasn't catastrophic, but I did have to pay a lot. All in all, I think I paid like $120 just to see the doctor, and then an additional like $75 to for the medication.
So here in the US, each state has different laws, also including healthcare. Like for
Mm-hmm.
instance, I've lived in Ohio and California. And your experience reminds me of my experiences in Ohio versus California. One experience when I moved back temporarily for, I would say, maybe 8 months, they did not accept my insurance and nothing was covered. I had to deal with it on my own. But you were mentioning the prices of getting certain tests done. What interests me in particular is that the prices of things that you mentioned were even less than what I personally experienced when I went home. So, my next question is, in Sweden, are you divided in any kind of way, like how we are in the United States? Like each state deals with things differently.
Yes, but I would say to a lesser degree. So Sweden is divided into different municipalities.
How would you specifically define a municipality in this instance? Is it closer to a United States county, or would it be compared to a different thing?
I would say that it would probably be more for our viewers at home, it would be sort of like a county, and each municipality has certain authorities that are voted on in sort of you would call a sort of like city council, and each municipality has its own elections. When we vote in Sweden, um, we vote for our the Reich elections, which is the top one, who is going to lead the government. We have the municipality elections. So within your municipality, and I believe that Sweden has 25 different municipalities spread along the country, and then we have our local elections, which would be our city or your town that you live in, and each uh, each election is represented by, I believe we have like about 9 different parties, and however, they are usually just represented in a sort of a red and blue block. In our case, the blue block represents the conservative wing, and the red block because it's the liberal wing.
Does Sweden consider the country as a whole more of a two-party system, or just every nine party is in?
No, no, we don't really like to identify ourselves as being like a bipartisan type of country. We do believe that the way that we have sort of, done things, that it is the best democratization of the system, because we have 3 major parties in Sweden that are the most popular. We have, in ranking of popularity, we have the Social Democratic Party,
Mm.
which is the OG left wing party. You would sort of call them uh, more social liberal. Um, then we have the we call it the new kid on the block, and that is the Swedish Democrats. Though they are the socially conservative and the more xenophobic party that could probably be most equated to many of the other sort of social conservative movements that we see around Europe. And then we have the moderates, and the moderates are a socially liberal but economically conservative party that is very, very popular with anyone who is um, it's I would say it's more like the Tories, and then the Social Democrats would be like the Labour Party if we think about England. But in America, we would probably say that you would probably see the moderates as the Republicans together with the Swedish Democrats, and then we would see the Democrats as the Social Democrats.
Being OG from Ohio, my first ever voting experience, I had to choose a specific party between the two primary ones, either Republican or Democratic. I was never informed of this until the day that I actually first voted. I was wondering if you ever had to deal with that kind of situation where you had to claim a party in order to vote, like before actually voting.
No, no. You mean that in order to well, this is the voter registration, that you have to register to vote for a party. Then
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't explain that enough. Okay, so I had already registered to vote with my experience. And then when I showed up, in order to receive an actual ballot, I had to say Republican or Democrat,
mm,
which I I originally, because I was not informed of this prior, I said independent, not knowing I had to say one of the two parties in order to vote in the presidential primary back in Ohio. Do you have any sort of situation where you have to say like which party?
no, no. Uh, no, in Sweden, when you go to vote, you walk into a building. It's usually held at any like communal building, and we have many different in different districts.
Mhm.
And you are basically handed a blank envelope, and you go behind that curtain, and you see a bunch of colored coded cards that are coded after each uh, party, both for the state, the municipality, and for the local elections. And you put three cards from the parties that you want to take, and you hand them in. It is made in such a way that mm, no one should even know what you're voting for until the vote is being counted.
Okay. I have two following questions before I move on to more healthcare related questions. Do you have any sort of mail-in form of voting?
Yeah, yeah, you can mail in, and you can also vote early.
Okay. And then my next question was in California specifically, you are allowed to register to vote and vote the same day. Is that allowed in Sweden?
Oh yeah, we in Sweden we don't register to vote.
Oh, okay. All right. So is there any kind of validation? Like, do you have to say your address, show any ID or any, what do you do?
Well, we have a social security number, and so when and every Swede is every Swedish citizen is cataloged, and we have records that are pretty well kept. That makes it that when you show up, they have like a list of people that are registered in the municipality, going from your social security number,
Mhm.
and then you show up, you show your ID, and they sort of cross you off a list, and they tell you to go vote.
Okay, let's move back to healthcare.
Of course.
Okay, so you, as in your country, pardon me, implemented universal health care in 1955, according to the New York Health Department, according to their governmental website. The United States has still not gone with that. And just what do you think of that in general?
I would say that, speaking as someone who has had um, a couple of people in my family that has been needed urgent medical care. I would say I could start small by saying that when my sister was like 12 or something, she broke her arm.
Mhm.
And the sort of negative aspect of our healthcare system is that um, it can be considered slow and ineffective
Mhm.
in such a way that in some aspects you have to wait to receive help.
Mhm.
My sister was in the emergency room for 8 hours before any doctor even took a look at her broken wrist. Me, meanwhile, um, it didn't cost her so much as a penny to get that checked out on. There's the general trade-off that you probably will hear from a lot of people from countries with free healthcare is that, oh, we have it free, but you sort of have to um, prepare for that. Your aid will either vary in efficiency and quality, or in the immediacy that you require your aid.
Yeah.
Now, if I can move to something that is more recent, well, my ever since 1.5 year passed, my father was diagnosed with cancer of the liver, and I would say that the journey that we've been on for this last 1.5 years, coming up on 2 years this autumn, We have received good care, professional care. He's even been recommended for specialist treatment by some of the more um, elite and specialist people with for his type of cancer in all of Europe, I believe. Um,
Mhm.
and it's one of those things that I don't believe that would be achievable for um, like the average American family with the system that you have. Like my father would not get that kind of treatment in the US. Now, if our family had been like our family in the US, I'm sure that we would, because as I've told you privately, my family is a financially very financially stable family. Um, so we would, I would probably say that we would probably be considered among the US to be close to the 1%. So we wouldn't have to worry about receiving treatment. But there are so many instances where I look at things that are being done in the US and things that um, are readily available for me as a Swedish citizen in my country. It becomes hard to ignore just how much of it would not be possible if I the roles were reversed. If I was a American citizen and if I had a household where just one of the parents or maybe both parents work a regular 9 to 5 without a healthcare system in place.
There's a lot, I find a lot of similarities, or at least one in comparison to that, the whole ranking from like 1 to 10, for example, in regards to healthcare. There's a local medical place out here in LA that I go to, and they will help you in accordance to how high you rank whatever situation you are dealing with. I still was there for 6.5 hours recently because news to the people watching this interview, I have neurological problems, I have seizures and other things, but I went there to get testing done because of having had brain surgery recently, like in the past couple of months, and I still was there for 6.5 hours.
Mm.
Um, and so I understand that, but I also am grateful because in other regards, when you were mentioning it taking time to see specialists, I also relate to that. But I feel like here, where I am, healthcare feels better taken care of. And I know that it is sold in a way that makes it seem like it would take more money from American citizens via taxes by certain people to make it seem like, oh, it would take so much money for us to implement universal health care in comparison to so many countries that have already implemented it. And we're talking like prior to the 1990s at the very, very latest. Like I know we were talking about mid 50s for you, but we're talking like early 1900s for the earliest if you go to the New York Health um regulations in regards to universal health care. But one quote I will read to you is an actual fact, a study by Yale. Okay, I'll just read it directly. A recent study, again, it happened in 2020, by Yale, found that Medicare for all would save around 68,000 lives a year while reducing American healthcare spending by around 13% or $450 billion a year. So you have a respectable college who's done the actual work to prove as much. And then also, I would like to mention that what was formerly called Obamacare and is now called the Affordable Care Act has made it so that pre-existing conditions are not, they don't negate you being helped out. According to the Center for Disease Control, aka the CDC, 129 million people in the United States have at least one major chronic disease, such as heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. Millions more have other chronic conditions like asthma, kidney disease, respiratory ailments, depression, and other mental health conditions. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, formerly known as Obamacare, millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions were denied coverage by insurance companies. Popularly. So it just, I personally am affected by it, but I know so many others who, prior to it being implemented, the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. So hearing from your perspective, just like what you think of in regards to that, it's just, I don't personally feel like we're progressing enough. And that's not in just one way. And so what do you think your country as a whole, or the entirety of Europe, but you can just stick to Sweden. Just like feel free to state whoever you are speaking for. What do you think is felt in regards to our putting off universal healthcare as a whole, knowing all that I've just informed you about?
What the attitude of the average Swede or the European on the dilemma of the Americans?
Yeah, what have you heard?
The quality of life and quality of living. Um, Especially when we talk about the Nordic countries, the Scandinavian countries. It is a subject of ridicule if we ever talk about like the US healthcare system, if that ever comes up in conversation. It is always spoken in tones of, well, I'm sure glad we don't live in the US. Um, this is a problem that has been cultivated consciously. It's not an accident that the US has such a shoddy healthcare system. There are many different reasons, if you would say either it's because of the pharmaceutical companies or if it's become because of um, policies that are being lobbied by uh, certain parties in order to keep a status quo on the economic market. And we also have the always the same dilemma of the of social security and of the quality of life of the average American. And I think that when we sort of discuss these things, like I'm going a bit on a tangent, but whenever we look at videos on Facebook or other social media, we are often being bombarded by scenarios and systems from people who are not part of the average American experience. They are always, almost always, exclusively given a view of what the rich people are talking about the plight and problems from their perspective. So we always see conservative people who are very well off talking about, well, why do people whine about not being able to afford healthcare? It's not that hard. You can afford it if you just work more. But the problem is that the average individual, the average family, the average American does not have it as well off the as social media is sort of making it out to be. And so those people are hit way harder by the lack of a healthcare system, with the lack of um, social security in a way that is very hard not to pity or feel sorry for. And I would say if we can ever stop from mocking America for being in this situation, we always do um, give a give a word of uh, solemnity, um, that we do know that the average people, they are the ones that are being affected by this.
Okay. Well, thanks for stopping by, Suite 419, Benjamin. Appreciate all your knowledge, personal experiences, everything. Thank you for being so open.
Thank you for having me.